do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host. My name is Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, it's the usual format. Just dial 516-453-9921 and press the number 1 button and you will go to the top of the line. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. And your Gmail will go into a rotation and will be read at some point in time on maybe another show. But we will attempt to read it if it's not eliminated due to the high volume of Gmails that we get. But you have your numbers, you know what to do. And let's get started with the show. First of all, let's start by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, let's do this starting right off. Got a question from the Gmail. It says this, if I can get this up here. It says this comes from, I guess, Liberator is the person's handle. It says, my question, Mr. Fuller, this morning is about why you say that if a white person who is a white supremacist becomes blind, then they're no longer a practicing white supremacist. That in order to be a white supremacist, you first have to know your colors. That doesn't make logical sense to me because if that white supremacist goes blind, they still have memory of sound and the recognition of names and descriptions. In other words, if a white supremacist goes blind, but they hear someone introduce themselves to them by saying their name is Jamal Jenkins, and then when Jamal speaks, he speaks using slang and ebonics, that white supremacist, without even seeing him, will know automatically that he's black, and then will decide he doesn't want to speak to him anymore and may demand that his caretaker take him away immediately so he doesn't have to be near him. White supremacist employers have for years, Mr. Fuller, discriminated against black applicants not by seeing them in person physically, but when they read their names on the application such as Jamal, Shaniqua, Jamila, Rashida, Tyrone, Antoine, etc. So I agree with you when you say that a white supremacist loses his or her ability to practice white supremacy if they become blind because they no longer see color. Mr. Fuller, what say you to that?
I don't remember ever giving that illustration within that context. I didn't say anything about being blind. I said if they know their colors. That's a mental thing. If you know your colors by any means. I don't know. I'd have to talk to a blind person about knowing colors, but I never used a blind illustration. So that's something that the person who is calling can take into consideration. But the position that I took is that what you know, what's in your head. If you know your colors. That's the way I've always said it, the best of my memory. I've always said it like that. So I don't know whether the illustration that the person is giving would apply or not, but that's something people can think about. That comes under VGQ as a suggestion. What if a person is blind? But I was saying if a person knows the difference between one color and another, and a person can be blind and still know their colors. I understand. I think I heard years ago that Ray Charles, who was not born blind, he became blind, I think, in his pre-teens, if I remember correctly. And he says he remembers how everything looks except some things he had never seen before. And he gave the illustration of the color chartreuse. He says he doesn't know what chartreuse looks like because he had never seen the color chartreuse. But somebody told him that it was green, and he had seen shades of green, different shades, and chartreuse is a shade of green, he said, but he had never seen it. So having never seen it, he didn't have any idea of what chartreuse looked like. But he had been told that it was a shade of green.
Okay. All righty. So there you have it, Liberator. Mr. Fuller answered or addressed your question. 516-453-9921 if you want to get in contact with Mr. Fuller. Chat room is now open, and we're happy for that. Question here comes from Gigi. She says this, Mr. Fuller. On page 343 of the code book, Mr. Fuller, you start off the paragraph near the middle of the page with, quote, since the beginning of the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists have consistently worked to disrupt, end of quotation. Mr. Fuller, I'm just curious as to how you know what the white supremacists were doing at the beginning of the system of white supremacy racism, when you always said that he doesn't know when the system of white supremacy began. Thank you.
Well, I said they disrupt because that's one of the techniques that they use today. They disrupt and corrupt anything that has to do with producing justice. So the evidence is they started doing it at some time, just like, I don't think that has anything to do with when it started. Because I don't know when it started, but I know what the effects have been because I am a recipient of the effects. Now, what the time frame is, I don't know that. I just don't know it. There are some people who say they do know, and these are the people who people can listen to because they say that they know it. But I've said that I don't know it, but I know the effects. Just like I don't know when on the exact date or any. I have no idea of when water was created, but I know I have some ideas about what water does. Water can drown a person. It can nourish a person. Water can put out fires, and that's all I'm going by. Just what it does. So that's the best that I can say. You deal with whatever you have to deal with. The compensatory code is about how to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a person wants to do some research on that, and they have done some research and listening to me talk by saying that I said that I didn't know when it began, well, I don't know when it began. But it says that I do say the the caller said that I said that it disrupts. Now, I do know that, but I don't see the connection between that and when it began. I'm just talking about what it does now,
Okay.
the effect that it has on me. And I have some idea about that. The very fact that I'm on this telephone talking about a thing called racism means that I have been affected. That's the logic.
Okay. Alrighty, before I go to this G-Bell, let's go to the phone lines and let's see if I can get Lola in here. Okay, Lola, we got you in here. Good morning. And what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Greetings, Mr. Bobby, and greetings to you, Mr. Fuller. It's always an honor to speak with you, Mr. Fuller. I have a statement and also a question. And I also would like to say happy birthday to you, Mr. Fuller. I know I missed it last week, but I pray that you have many more. It's amazing how the universe allowed me to miss certain shows for odd reasons, but I trust the movement of time. So with that being said, I have told friends and family how important your work is to me and the inspiration you have given me, and they have disowned and mistreated me for that growth. For the mistreatment, they no longer have access to me. Now they're on the search for the person who inspired my new mind and courageous act. So they finally found your radio station. They are calling in to challenge you because you, in their eyes, challenge their beliefs and religion. I don't like when people challenge you, Mr. Fuller, but I know you can handle yourself very well. Your response to questions are always insightful. And due to that, I will not be calling in because of my privacy, but I will be definitely observing very closely and learning as usual. I think it's amazing how you continue to give of yourself and continue to repeat yourself that we can understand, especially for those who seek understanding. That shows a lot of strength, and I'm forever grateful. Now I'm getting into my question. There are family members who are, I'm trying to find it. Just a moment.
You'll take your time. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm trying to find it. Oh, it's basically on religion. So I'm trying to figure out what was my question.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do. I will have the technicians, if you can't find it in the next few seconds, I will have the technicians, I'll put you on hold, and then when you get it, let the technicians know, and then we can bring you back in. Would that be okay, or have you found it yet?
I haven't found it.
Okay, well, I'm going to put you on hold or mute, and then when you find it, let the technicians know, and then I'll bring you back in. Is that okay with you?
Okay. Yes, fine.
Okay.
I have to.
Okay. All righty. Let's see here. 516-453-9921 is the number to get in contact with the show. Make sure you press the number 1 button, and we will get you. You will go to the top of the line, and we will get you in. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. If you're just going to listen, and you can just listen to the show, you don't have to give the technician or the call screener your name. You can just put just listening. That way I will not, or you will not be disconnected on purpose. I'll put it that way. Okay, now someone is calling from the 467 area code. Your name is not up here. I don't know if they're going to type it in, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to see if I can click you in, and then you can give your name, and then you can ask your question. Let me see here. Okay, technology here. Okay, Scott, there we go. Thank you so much. Okay, Scott, good morning and welcome to the program. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Scott? Okay, wait a minute. Let me see here. Okay, Scott, are you on there? Scott from Sweden, okay.
No, it's not Scott. No, sir. It's Carlos from Sweden.
Okay, anyway, on my screen came Scott, but that's okay. You're on. Okay. That's what's important. From Sweden. What time is it in Sweden, by the way?
About 15 minutes over 3.
Okay, you're about 6 hours ahead.
Afternoon
okay.
Time.
Okay. What is your question for Mr. Fuller, Scott? And thank you for calling.
My question is, I have the original version. It's page 334, and it's a quote from Neely Jr. And I have if you can explain this. I say the quote first, and then he can explain.
Okay.
There are many. He said this 1964. It's a long time ago. Okay. Many white people hate black people. Those white people who hate black people do not hate black people because black people are black. They hate black people because white people are not black. So I wonder why that. What is it? Why white people? What is it? White people hate because if. I really don't get it.
What book are you reading from? You said page 334?
334. It's the original version.
Of the original version?
Yes.
Okay, I have the original version in front of me, and you said
334.
334,
yeah.
Yes, I remember writing that.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
I remember writing that, and the reason I said that is because of what's in the title, one of the titles of the book, Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and Action, and that comes under thought. Now, I said that as a thought statement. It was a statement. Now, what that can mean is whatever an interpreter of it will think about. Because I haven't come to a conclusion as whether or not that statement is true or false. And that's why I wrote it. I wrote it as, you might say, as something to think about. It's a hypothesis. Yes. It's something to think about, and then you think about what you can do with that information. Now, I have thought about what I wrote. You know, I presented that. I said, well, black people or white people hate black people not because black people are black, but white people hate black people because white people are not black. Now, that is kind of convoluted, but it could be true, and it might not be true, and then it gets into the questions of, you know, a number of questions. What do you mean by hate? And what do you mean by white people and black people and hate? And is that really a part of the mixture? Or is it something else? In other words, it was a hypothetical statement. It became so controversial in 1984 in the original edition when people would ask me about it, and I would give that kind of response. It's just something to think about, okay? But it became so controversial that people didn't know what my motive was for putting something like that in the book, that I didn't put it into the updated version. You won't find that in the revised expanded edition of the textbook for victims of white supremacy.
Okay.
You won't find that entry.
Okay, well, I understand.
Because I decided that it may be causing more confusion than was necessary without any productivity about replacing the system of white supremacy with justice. And that's a no-no. It's supposed to improve all the time. So, but it's still valid. I have told people it's still a valid thought. All thoughts are valid.
Yes.
You can think about anything and then come to your own conclusion. And that was a statement that was designed for people to think about it and come to their own conclusion.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, my brother from Sweden, for your call, and don't be a stranger. Okay, Lola. If you have the information, I don't see you on the board, but you can call back and we can get you on here. Okay, let's see here. Let's go right here. Oh, who do I have on here? Is this Lola?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, go ahead, Lola. I just don't have you on my screen, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a lot of notes, and I know that I have to be very precise when speaking to Mr. Fuller. But with that in mind, I would like to speak on really the basis of religion. I believe that in order to believe in something, you have to do it. And I think that religion was systematically developed to confuse people. And with that in mind, without knowing who the enemy is, because they don't see white supremacy, well, most people that I know that is religious or call themselves religious or spiritual or believe a certain theology, they don't see the white supremacy as being the enemy, but they see this methodical creature, which is the devil, as being their enemy to dismantle or defeat. And with that in mind, Mr. Fuller, do you think religious people would ever adopt to any other code or belief system, you know, based on what they believe in?
The code has this approach to religion. For one thing, you never get into a religious argument, period, except you do get raised questions about religion, and that's the religion of white supremacy. And you raise questions about all other religions, and these are the questions. What is just three of them? What does your religion require? Rather, what is the name of your religion? That's question number one. That's when you're talking to anybody about religion or someone starts talking to you about religion. You keep it very concise. You keep it real tight. Otherwise, you're going to get into what they call religious arguments. And there are religious arguments going on 24 hours a day all over the planet. Because what is a religion? A strong belief backed up by action. So people start talking about religion, then animosities start brewing. This has been the observation and the experience of many, many multi-millions of people. And then many times it escalates into a fight and killing. People kill about religion. I mean, it started off just being just a what you might call harmless conversation. And people wind up killing each other. So that tells you something right there. Wait a minute. How did first of all, how did we get into an argument? And then the argument made for what you call, quote, unquote, bad feelings. And then the bad feelings, quote, unquote, led to a fight and hostilities. And then the fight led to killing. And this has happened all down to the history of what people call, quote, unquote, religion. So the compensatory code says none of that. Absolutely none of that. But if you're going to have a fight, you have a fight with the most powerful religion, and that is the system of white supremacy, which according to the code is the most powerful political and religious system in recorded history up to the year 2020 at least. Now, having said that, how do you handle discussions on religion on a day-to-day basis? and I'll get back to it. 3 questions. Stay in the question lane. Stay away from making statements. And what are the questions? You ask a person, what is the name of your religion? That includes, quote, unquote, family members and everybody. What is the name of your religion? If a person has a religion, most religions have a name. Next thing you want to know, number 2, what does your religion require you to do in all 9 areas of activity? Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, other people's religions, sex, and war. Those are the 9 areas of activity as are presented in the book. Okay? What does your religion require you to do in those 9 areas of activity? That's the question. You're asking the person questions. And then the third question, the bottom line question. What does your religion require you to do when you interact with me, when you see me coming? Even if you don't know me, never saw me before and all like that, but you're going to interact with me. You're going to say something to me. You're going to have contact with me. What does your religion require you to do when you contact me in any of those areas of activity? And I'll enumerate them again. Economics. What does your religion require you to do when you interact with me when it comes to economics, meaning the use of time and energy, basically? Not just money, but the use of time and energy. What does your religion require you to do in the field of education? The person might answer, as an illustration I'll give. My religion requires me to educate you about my religion. Okay, you got your answer. And never argue about the answer. Just ask questions about it, whatever, the person tells you. Stay in the question lane. That way you stay away from arguments. You don't make any statements. Don't make any statements. Don't make any statements. Stay in the question lane. What does your religion require you to do? Go into the 4th area of activity. Let's see, I went through economics, education, entertainment, labor. What does your religion require you to do if you're going to be working with me on a project? Labor is work of some type, accomplishing something. Accomplishing what? In order to achieve what? And then all through the rest of the areas of activity, including sex. What does your religion require you to do where you're going to include me? And it's something that has to do with sex. You want to know, what does your religion? Religions have requirements. Most religions that I've heard of, I've never heard of a religion, a strong belief backed up by action, that didn't have some requirements. And so that's all you want to know. And once the person tells you that, that's it. And you just listen. You don't fall out with anybody. It shouldn't be any shouting matches about religion, except, and it shouldn't be any shouting matches about that, the religion of white supremacy. That's the one religion you should be opposed to. But you're not in opposition to any other religion. Why? Because the religion of white supremacy is the most powerful religion, and it's a religion designed to keep people from practicing any other religion, and has been successful at doing so if you're a person of color.
Okay. Lola, thank you for your question. And don't be a stranger, Lola. Thank you very much. If you want to keep listening, I'll put you on hold. For everybody else, you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. You know the drill. To get in contact with the show, call this number, 516-453-9921, and hit the number 1 button, and you will go basically to the top of the line if there aren't others in front of you. And if Mr. Fuller is not answering a question, you will go right in. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. And at some point, your question or Gmail will be answered. Maybe not today, but it will be addressed unless it is automatically deleted by the system, because we do get quite a bit of Gmails, and I may not be able to get to them. If not, just, resend it. Okay, those are the particulars. Mr. Fuller will be addressing his book in about 15 minutes. As far as I know, all the books are in, and the chat room is available. And I thank our technicians for doing that. Moon Pie, thank you for chipping in. Before we move on in today's program, Justice Soldier wrote this, Mr. Fuller. He said, regarding the question asked by Carlos from Sweden, he says that he, being Justice Soldier, says this: Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, the Cress theory of color, confrontation, and racism, white supremacy, explains why, quote, whites hate blacks because whites are not black. That's what Justice Soldier writes. Anybody have those? Have Francis Cress Welsing book, and check that out. But thank you, Justice Soldier, for that information. Okay, let's see here. We have Quay Window. Let's see if I can get Quay in here. Let me see. Let's see. I think we got you in here. Go ahead, my brother. How are you this morning?
Hey, morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Neely Fuller. My question for Neely Fuller is, due to white supremacy, it seems that black people are not aware that they need to regroup with their race, or at least begin to care about their race. What do you think we can do to get black people to care about their race more?
What do I think about black people doing what?
What do you think we can do to get black people to care about their race more?
Care about what?
Their race.
Their race? Okay. No, we should care about justice. The textbook for victims of white supremacy is not about propping up race of any kind. Black people are not members of a race. Never have been. Black people are just black people. Race is racism. It says that in the textbook, according to compensatory counter-racist logic. Race is racism. If you're a member of a race, you practice racism. That's all it's good for. And what is racism? Mistreating people based on color. So it's just one race, and that's the white race, because it's designed to dominate and mistreat people based on color. It's called the system of white supremacy. That's the official name of it. And the white people who practice white supremacy, see, a race is something you have to join. So the white people who decided to join a race, and that race was the white race, and it is a system of white supremacy, then they practice racism. Racism, being a member of a race is not good for anything except practicing racism. There's no record of it being good for anything else. You can be a member of a tribe. You can be a member of a family. You can be a member of a sorority, a fraternity. But I never joined any race. I was told that I was a member of a race. Told by whom? By the white supremacists. They did the telling. You know, They say, well, I'm saying, well, I'm me. I mean, and they say, yeah, but you're colored. You're a Negro. You're a member of the Negroid race. I never joined any race. What are you talking about? What did I say, boy? I'm telling you what you are. That's white supremacy, racism in action.
Well, what can we do to get more black people to care about and creating justice or care about them being mistreated?
Starting with the textbook for victims of white supremacy and participating in exchanges of views like the textbook itself says, just like we're having now. See, racism, getting rid of racism is just another job. So you ask the question, what are you supposed to be doing while you're on this planet? You're supposed to be solving problems. Solving what problem? The biggest problem that's right in front of you. So if you're a person of color, last time I checked, the biggest problem for a person who has color in his or her skin is something called the system of white supremacy. Now, if there's a bigger problem than that, I want to know what it is, because you always start with the big problems first, then you work back to the little problems.
Okay. Thank you, my brother. And don't be a stranger. Okay. All righty. Let's go down to Window in the 803. For those of you who may not be familiar with that, that's in the great state of South Carolina. Go ahead, Wendell.
Hello, everybody. Mr. Neely Fuller, my question would be, from my observation of going through life, whenever I would, on a job situation, wherever I would ask a white supervisor, someone that was in a higher position than me, basically, that was my supervisor or something, I would ask them questions because I wouldn't understand what they're talking about. And I've always noticed that it seemed like they would always get upset and say, hey, look, I'm not going to argue with you. And I always tell them, I'm not arguing. I'm just asking questions because I don't understand what you're saying. And my question to you is, why is that just me, or is that something that they do just to try to, they want to take it and make it like you're arguing with them, but they don't want you to ask them questions, basically. And I'm trying to figure out, why is that? Why don't they want you to ask them questions?
You'll find out by asking questions. So you just simply say, like you gave an illustration of, they'll start arguing. When they're arguing, they're saying something. So you stay in the question lane. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So the logical question you will ask is, sir, ma'am, and always be courteous, do you want me to ever ask you any questions? Or, and if they say yes, and answer, never move to the second question before you get the first question answered. That's another thing to remember. Never move to the second question in a conversation until the first question is answered. Okay, I have a tendency to do that. Most people do, I think. Okay, but that's a strict rule of counter-racist or compensatory logic. So you just simply say, am I to ask you any questions? Sir, ma'am, do you want me to ask you any questions? And wait. Once you ask that question, wait for the answer. And the answer should be either yes or no. And if they say yes, then you say, well, when can I ask you some questions? Or a question? How many questions? And then you put a question mark behind that. And you write down what they tell you and put a time and date on it, particularly on a job. Because, see, things tend to get messy when they're not written down. because then everybody starts head scratching and trying to remember who said what and when. And you make sure that every word that you get in answer to your questions is recorded, and let them know you're writing this down. And if they ask you a question, well, why are you writing down what I'm saying? And you'll answer the question by saying, because what you say to me, sir, I consider to be of utmost importance. That's the codified response. Of utmost importance.
Right.
In other words, you're a white person doing some talking to a black person. Boy, a white person talking to a black person about anything, this is important. All right? And you don't want to make no mistakes about what they said. Okay? I mean, and I think they'll agree with you on that. And if they don't, you can ask them, sir, do you think that what you say to me is important? And like I said, once you say it, don't add on. Put a question mark behind that question, and don't move to the next question until that question is answered. Sir, ma'am, Miss Greenwood, Miss Henderson, whatever. Do you think that what you say to me is important? And if they say yes, and then you have a next question. Miss Henderson, do you think that being what you're saying to me is important, that I should write it down so that I don't make any mistakes about what you said to me that is of the utmost importance? Yes or no? And if they say, well, no, I don't want you to write it down, and then you say, why? Do you think that what you say is worth remembering? See, let's move to the next question after they give you the answer of why. Why say something that you don't want me to remember? See what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And somebody once said, the worst lead pencil in the world is better than the best memory.
Okay. Okay, that sounds pretty good. All right, Wendell from the 803. Appreciate your call, my brother. Appreciate it very much. All right, and don't be a stranger. Before we go to talk about your book, Mr. Fuller, JJ has this. It says, he said, can I ask Mr. Fuller, what is the compensatory way to deal with family where the upbringing was so strictly religious that it was abusive in nature? Should I feel any sense of obligation to continue any relationship since such contexts are traumatic in nature?
You approach it from those three questions. That's any religion. I don't care what kind of religion it is. Religions you haven't heard of before, because I understand there are thousands of religions if you're talking about tribal religions, not just the religions that most of us are familiar with, the ones, that I think it's about 6 of them, world religions, but there are many thousands, and at least hundreds, I would say, of what you call tribal religions. So you ask a person, well, Aunt Florence, what is the name of your religion? That's a family member, okay? And what does your religion require to do in all 9 areas of activity? See, get an understanding. Let's don't start arguing and everybody just screaming at each other about this, that, and the other. I mean, if they're talking about religion, religions have rules. So you ask the person who has the religion, what are the rules, the laws, the things you must do in order to conform to your religion, since they are the ones that are talking about religion. People bring up religion to you, you say, well, wait a minute, okay, school is now in session. Let's sit down and talk about this. So we have what? Understanding. because that's what you should get in any conversation from anybody. And when you start talking about religion, you better believe the one thing you better have, as your goal, to have a complete understanding of what they're talking about. Completely. And those are the questions. To get to it right quick so it's not long and drawn out and everybody waving their arms in the air and all that. So you're going to make it real tight. What is the name of your religion, Aunt Florence? And don't help people with the answer. That's another important thing to remember. Don't say, Aunt Florence, what's the name of your religion? Are you one of them Jehovah's Witnesses? Are you one of them Mormons? Or are you one of them Episcopalians? No. Don't help out with the answer. Be quiet. What's the name of your religion? And put a question mark behind that. And then keep your mouth shut and let them answer the question. And don't move to the second question, because it's not but three, until you get the first question answered. Aunt Florence, what's the name of your religion? You might be surprised. She might say, my religion don't have no name. Now, she never said that before, but you never asked.
Okay. All righty. Let's do this. Everett in Houston, I call him Eveready because he's there. Thank you, brother. And Darnell from Phoenix, we're going to be getting to you. But first, we're going to have Mr. Fuller address his book. Everybody take a listen to this. Mr. Fuller, please proceed.
Yes. Go to producejustice.com. That's a website. producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the textbooks that I have written, the revised expanded edition and the original edition, and a word guide. Some people wanted the original edition. I would recommend the 2016 edition because that's the revised expanded. But some people say that they didn't understand the revised expanded edition until they had read the original edition. So I started having it printed. But I think that the revised expanded edition is adequate because it covers just about everything that's in the 1984 original edition. But that's a matter of choice. But you go to producejustice.com, and the things I've been discussing this morning, the things I've been saying, like the three things I said about what to say about religion, whenever religious discussions come up, the three questions that you have, and stay away from making any kind of remarks after you get answers to those three questions. That's in the textbook under the 7th area of activity. The book is segmented into 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And it makes suggestions about what a black person can do each and every day on the job and all this, or wherever you happen to be on the planet, in reaction to the system of white supremacy. That's why one of the supplemental titles of the textbook, I have 3 titles to a book. I just chose to do it that way, but it's a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism. And racism is described as white supremacy. There's no other form of racism other than the system of white supremacy. According to what? According to logic and according to what I put in the book. Everything that I put in the book is supposed to be based on logic, the logic that came with the universe. And there's not supposed to be anything that's going to mislead a person in that book. But you get the book by going to producejustice.com. It makes suggestions that you can accept or reject as an individual person. Depends on what you think will work. Because if it doesn't work for you, you pass it by. Hand it to somebody else. See if it works for them. But you pick out what works for you. The book is written that way. You accept or reject whatever's in the book, but it's designed for victims of white supremacy. Go to producejustice.com.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, let's go back to the phone lines, and let's go to the 832 area. That would be you, Everett. I think we got you on. Everett, okay, gotcha. Go ahead, Everett. Good morning, and how are you this morning, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Reading your book got me thinking a lot. And you say in order to produce justice, we must get rid of the system of white supremacy. Well, after reading your book, I'm still reading. I'm not finished yet. Should we establish the system of logic in order to produce justice as well? Because a lot of things you say in your book is, I would think people should know that already. You know, treat people equally, try to help people out that needs the most help. Is there a system of logic in the world right now?
Everything that's ever been done that worked went according to logic. Logic, what does logic mean? The word logic. It means cause and effect. In other words, fire will burn. Water is wet. Water and fire are not the same thing, even though they interact with each other. Water will put out fire, but you have to have a certain amount of water in order to do that. And water will nourish people, just water itself. It can nourish people. It can help a person to have strength. Water can give a person strength. A person in the desert might need water. So that person will drink water and get strength. But water also, in a certain amount, can drown a person. It can harm a person. So logic is about using everything in the universe in a way that you get what? A constructive result rather than a non-constructive result. And that's what we should be following. Follow logic. Don't follow Neely, Fuller, or any other person. Unless that person is being logical, so you're not really following the person. You're following the logic that the person is using. Logic governs everything. This is real important to understand. And anything that anybody is doing that's not logical, you want to back away from that. You say, now, wait a minute. Now, logic is supposed to produce a constructive effect. It's no such thing as in between. Every move that a person makes, if you sit down to eat a plate of food, there's a logic to what you're doing. Why are you sitting down eating? That's question number one. Well, you're eating in order to get nourishment for your body. Your body requires that you have to have a thing called food. So you're sitting there eating. Now that food, or what you call food, quote unquote, is going to have an effect on your body. That's logic. And what that effect is going to be is either constructive or non-constructive. So you sit down and you say you're eating broccoli, but also you're drinking. So what are you drinking along with your eating the broccoli? What are you drinking? So you reach over and you're drinking vodka. So you're eating broccoli. That nourishes the body. That has a constructive effect. Then you're drinking vodka, and it has been proven that if you're drinking that vodka, it's going to have a non-constructive effect. So you're canceling out the broccoli with the vodka. I got to have, my food, but I got to have cigarette with it. Now, look at the food. All right. The food might be nourishing if it's spinach, but now is the cigarette going to be nourishing? There's no such thing as in between. Every move that a person makes is going to have a constructive effect, non-constructive effect. Somewhere right now, some black person is putting a 9mm into their waistband, getting ready to hit the streets. All right, before the day is over, okay, because they're going over to settle a beef with somebody, quote, unquote. Okay, this settling of this beef, is this going to have a constructive effect on your future or a non-constructive effect? You better ask yourself that before you go over there with that 9mm semi-automatic pistol in your waistband. You better think about that. Whomever's doing it right now, because somebody's doing it right this minute.
All righty. Everett from Houston, thank you very much. Don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, before we close out the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show, a question was asked from the chat room, and it simply says this: can you ask Neely Fuller if he's seen any recent movies that is a good display of white supremacy?
No, I haven't, not that I recall. I haven't been seeing any movies at all recently, not on account of the virus. That would be a factor, but just on account of I usually don't go out to the movies. I wait and see them on television because I just don't have time, for one thing. But I haven't seen any movies, in answer to the question, recently that I would recommend, other than the list that I read some months ago. I was supposed to put it on the website. Haven't gotten around to that yet. I still intend to do it. But I don't talk about it anymore because I kept promising to do it, and I wasn't keeping the promise, and that is a code violation big time. I try not to violate the code, but that's a code violation. I have to call it what it is. I said I was going to put it up on the website, and I haven't gotten around to doing it.
Okay.
Things kept coming up to interfere with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I still intend to do it. But I haven't seen any movies lately. Someone told me about a movie that came out some time ago called Avatar. So I asked them. I went into the question mode. What's this Avatar about? Describe some of the scenes in it. And what are the lessons of Avatar? And they said, well, Fuller, I think that if you see the movie, you will see a lot of lessons in that movie if you look for them. But I have not seen the movie yet.
Okay.
I understand it was a real popular movie at the time it came out. I've heard a lot of people say that, but I have not seen it. But I might say that since people say it's got a lot of lessons in it, if you really look for the lessons, that the lessons jump out at you, well, I say any movie that has lessons that cause you to think, everybody should see them. Everybody. Because we need to be taught lessons, the best of lessons and the worst, and taught the difference between the two.
All righty. We have come to the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Thank you for listening. For those who have to go, hopefully we will see you next week. But for those who want to stay, we are going to present the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller after a 5-second break. And thank you for listening. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, you can do so by calling 516-453-9921 and make sure that you press the number 1 button, give the your name, please, ma'am, please, sir, to the call screener so that I can properly introduce you and we can get to your question. For those of you who would like to Gmail me, you can at the number 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Bear in mind, it will go into a rotation, and at some point in time, another show perhaps, it will be read if it's not automatically deleted. If it's not automatically deleted, it will be read, and I will give you the date and time so that you could hear yourself on that. Okay, with that being said here, oh, by the way, the chat room is open and it is functioning, so that is a wonderful thing. Okay, we're going to go to the phone lines, to the 303 area. Darnell from Phoenix, Arizona. See if I can get this to operate properly. Get you in here, Darnell. Wait a minute. Okay, Darnell, we got you in. I think, there we go. Darnell, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
My question is in regards to the attempted kidnap of the governor of Michigan. In your opinion, according to the code, do you think that was a message by suspected white supremacists to white people and non-black people? And if so, if you think that was a message being sent, what was the message?
I don't know, because I haven't taken that much interest in it. I heard about it on the news, but up to this point, I have not looked into it enough to give any kind of correct answer to that question, because I have not taken that much interest in it at this point. But within the, according to the compensatory counter-racist code, anything that a white supremacist has anything to do with, as long as that white person is a white supremacist, that white person should be suspected of doing something that's going to give strength to the system of white supremacy, which is, what is the system of white supremacy designed to do? It's designed to dominate and mistreat. Those two things, dominate and mistreat people who are classified as non-white. That's what it's for. That's the service that it renders to the people of the known universe. And so, if a white supremacist has anything to do with that kidnapping, or that proposed kidnapping, or attempted kidnapping, or whatever it was, if they had anything to do with it, it was directly or indirectly intended to give strength to the system of white supremacy. Because the white supremacists don't do anything deliberately without having that intention. And that's the only thing I can say about it.
Okay. Darnell, thank you for your call. Thank you for listening, and do not be a stranger to the program. Okay, let's do this. Anita, Armand, Irv, and Chris, I got you on deck unless somebody calls in. So let me go to Anita. She says this, Mr. Fuller. She says, can a white person act as a white supremacist irregardless if they are a poor or wealthy white person? Thank you.
Yes, depending on what those words mean. I've heard a lot about the poverty line. When is a person poor? I've heard some black people say, we were poor, but we didn't know it. I was raised up in a big family. We all slept, a bunch of us slept in the same bed. Said, but we didn't have any problem with it because that's all we knew. We, had very few utensils in the kitchen. and very little food. But, we were relatively got along fine and all like that. And it wasn't until later on that I found out that we were really some poor folks. I've heard black people say that. Okay, so what is poverty? What is wealthy? But what the code book says, based on logic, a white supremacist is a white supremacist. Period. Doesn't make any difference whether he or she has millions of dollars or pounds or whatever the currency is, or the person is what you might call completely broke. If the person believes in dominating and mistreating people because of color, a racist is a racist. A racist is a racist is a racist is a racist is a racist. That's racism. You believe in mistreating people based on the color of that person's skin, dominating and then mistreating people based on the color of their skin, you're a white supremacist. If you're a white person that believes in doing that, that's what you are. And anything else that you are is secondary.
Okay.
Having $2 or $2 trillion doesn't matter. A racist is a racist. According to what? According to compensatory counter-racist logic.
Okay. Remember, when you call in, please, ma'am, please, sir, give the call screener your name so that I can properly introduce you to the program. Before we do that, let's do this. Mr. Fuller, question from Armand says this. Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts on the Black Panther Party for self-defense when it first originated here in America?
Oh, the people who are called the Black Panther Party, they do what they do, or they say what they say. Now, why do I respond that way? That's what I mean by a codified response. See, a codified response to any question, according to the code, that's why I say we need one. So we always know what we're doing, and we know what the outcome of what we're doing is going to be before we even do it. And that is, I am required to answer a question about any other black person who is doing something associated with counter-racism, meaning getting rid of racism, either directly or indirectly. I am required by the code to say those words, and that is, they do what they do, or they say what they say. And if it's an individual, you say, he does what he does, or he said what he said. And if it's a female individual, she said what she said, or she did what she did, or she's doing what she's doing, or she's saying what she's saying. That's the codified response. Anytime anybody asks any black person, any non-white person, about what another non-white person is doing about race, racism, or counter-racism, that is what's supposed to be the universal codified response. He's doing what he's doing. Or in the case, like you said, of the Black Panther Party, whatever that means, you say if they're black people and they're involved in doing something about racism, well, they're doing what they're doing. And say, well, they said such and such a thing the other day, and well, they said what they said. In other words, go and check with them about what they said. Don't check with me, Why? Now, why do you give that kind of answer? Because the white supremacists are known. That's one of their favorite tactics, See, I'm not talking about other black people when they ask the questions, but I'm saying it's best to get in the practice of talking to everybody just like that. That if anybody asks me about, like they just did, see, because the white supremacists will ask those type of questions, and the white supremacists are also listening to the type of answers you give. So if you ask me about any black organization, what is the NAACP doing? What is the Black Panther Party doing? What is anybody doing that's involved in racism? And those people are non-white. The standard codified response for everybody on the planet is supposed to be, according to logic, they're doing what they're doing. They're saying what they're saying. And the next question is, well, what do you think about what they're saying? I think, sir, that they are saying what they're saying. That's what I think about what they're saying. Now, if you want any editorial or anything else said, you go and check with them as a suggestion. That's if you want to make that suggestion, and that's optional.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's do this. This is from Irv. He says, Mr. Fuller, what intrigued the white people long ago to sacrifice their lives in unnecessary violence to establish white supremacy if they wouldn't be alive to see it flourish and benefit from it firsthand in the future?
Wait a minute. I think that sounds like a real important question. What is that question again?
It says, what intrigued the white people long ago to sacrifice their lives in unnecessary violence to establish white supremacy if they wouldn't be alive to see it flourish and benefit from it firsthand in the future?
Well, I don't much understand the question, and that's something I have to be cautious about, but I don't understand that question. There's something missing in my understanding of the question. I don't know. I'm not getting something here. That the question is not clear to me. It really isn't.
Okay, I'm going to suggest to this person that they resend the question and ask.
Yes, but anyway, yes, because that sounds like, I'm missing something, and that's my fault. I'm this way, as people have noticed, I guess, because it is true that I do that with a lot of questions that are being asked. I want a more detail or something, a more concise way of the question being asked, because I simply don't understand some of the questions that I asked. And that's my fault. My fault, that's a fault. That's a flaw of mine as a personality. That's just the truth of the matter. It may be obvious to everybody what the question really is. For some reason, there are some questions, the way they're asked, I'm so precise with words that I think sometimes too many things, and I don't know how to answer the question. That's a flaw that I'm trying to correct.
Okay, what I have just done.
I'm not. Part of the code is I'm not supposed to answer a question that I don't understand the question.
Okay.
Until I understand the question.
Okay, what I have just done is I responded to that person and asked this person, Irv, to resend the question again, and when and if he does, I will read it and then go ahead on. Let's do this. Darnell, we have you back with another quick question. Go ahead, Darnell. We have you on here right now. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello. Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning,
The question I have for you, Mr. Fuller, is if you could gauge the progress of your speaking on the code from when you first started until present day, what would you grade our progress as? Thank you.
All right, the progress based on what I have done?
Yes.
I want to understand that question. On the
yes,
progress
according to the code.
And using the code?
Yes.
I haven't made any. Zero. Why? Because of what I measure it by. See, what I measure according to the code, which is according to logic, 99.5 won't do. In other words, has Neely Fuller solved the race problem? The answer is no. So that means I haven't done anything. Because I set out to do what? Solve the race problem. Why talk about the race problem without having in mind that you're trying to solve it? That's code. That's counter-racist logic. If you're going to do a job, do the job. Now, people might argue that, well, I mean, what can one person do? And one person solve the race problem? Yes. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And anything short of that is not fulfilling what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the logic. Neely Fuller has not solved the race problem. And you say, well, nobody has. Well, so what? It's Neely Fuller's job to solve the race problem if that's what he set out to do. I didn't set out to swat flies. You're going to do something, do it.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Darnell, from, I believe it was from Phoenix.
No
Thank
progress.
You. Okay.
That's where I am right now. None.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem hasn't been solved.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, that sergeant that you talk about often told you that he was interested, not your complaining, but something about results or something like that?
Absolutely. That's the person that started me on, if you just remind me to just jump right in right now. That's the thing that started me to saying just what I just said to the caller previous to this, who asked me about progress. That sergeant said something to me. I came into the supply shed. I was in the military, in the Air Force. And I came in and I told him how hard we had been working. He said, Fuller, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you something. Don't ever come in here telling me about how hard you have been working. Show me the result. Now get the hell out of here. Sometimes master sergeants don't play. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, he was a black master sergeant, and he knew a whole lot. Now, I didn't like that, but I thought about it. I thought about it much later. Forgot about it for a while, and then I thought about what he had said. I think it was a year or two later, when I wasn't even around him no more. You know, because it made me angry.
Yes, sir.
When he gave that response. But I said, it makes sense. Because, see, he elaborated. He said, look out that window. I was in Japan. He said, see that Japanese farmer out there with that plow? I mean, he's got a wooden plow. And he's got a scrawny animal pulling it. And he's doing the best he can. He's up to his waist sometimes in sewage-type fertilizer. And he's doing the best he can with what he has. And he's not looking up from his work. He said, that's hard work, Fuller. You're in here talking about working hard. Just keep looking at him. You don't notice him. So suppose you were doing that right now. I'm not doing that. You're not doing that. Okay? But his punchline was, get the hell out of here. All right?
Okay.
Come back and show me the result.
The results.
He was letting me know that hard work was nothing new. That people been working hard all down through millions of years of hard work. People rolling rocks up hills and whatnot, and dragging, people who had very rudimentary tools. They're just down there with all kinds of machinery and whatnot, and all kinds of, stuff that you can work with, dollies that you can put stuff on and roll. People didn't have that 2 or 3 million years ago. Now, he didn't say all this, but that's what he was implying.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing unique about hard work. What's unique is results. And he's correct about that. And every black person should have that in mind.
Okay. For those of you who are on the line, there is a tremendous documentary or a tremendous conversation between Mr. Neely Fuller and Dr. Randy Short. And it's on YouTube, and I refer to it many times and watch it many times, even though I've heard it many times. And it's called, just as Mr. Fuller just said, Results. Listen to that if you have the time. It's very informative, but it supports what Mr. Fuller is talking about right now. It's on YouTube, and it's called Results, about 47 minutes. It is outstanding. Anyway, speaking about outstanding, let's go to Sam from Colorado. Okay, Sam, you're on. Go ahead, please, sir. And please cut your radio down in the back because it's interfering with what we're doing.
So I'm not exactly sure how to do. I'm on the phone, and I don't have the radio going.
But what we can't hardly hear because it's competing against you and then what Mr. Fuller is going to say. That background is whatever it is.
Is that better?
We can still hear it.
Is there still background noise?
We can still hear someone talking in the background, sir. I'll tell you what. Okay, wait a minute. Let me say this. When you get your situation straight where we can just hear you.
You shouldn't hear anything now. Do you still hear stuff?
No. Okay, that's better. That's better.
Yeah. All right. There's just a quick comment. I did hear an old episode where somebody mentioned North Sentinel Island. And Mr. Fuller, you're absolutely correct. That island is, they're what we would call primitive people. They just have bow and arrows. If somebody showed up with an AK or if somebody dropped a, smoke bomb on or something, I don't think they are absolutely not free from white supremacy. They're just contained by it. But my question was, at what age do you think is a good or appropriate age to talk to our children and explain full on, not just saying, there's racism, like explaining, white supremacy, all 9 areas to them?
The best time to talk about racism to anybody of any age is when they ask questions. People are ready to listen when they ask the questions. That's why a lot of people have said that they have a problem with family members. Now, I said there shouldn't be any problems if you follow the code, because it's when they ask you questions, they're ready to talk. Okay? So that's the best time, anytime they start asking you. But prior to that, you are supposed to be teaching any person, and everybody's supposed to be teaching you to follow what? Logic. So that's the first thing if you want to teach someone or tell someone about how to what? Solve problems, because every breath that we take should be about solving problems. That's what we are put on the planet for. So the race problem is just another problem, but it's the biggest when it comes to people of color. But the best time to talk about any subject, regardless of a person's age or what, is when that person has questions about that particular subject.
Okay.
And you don't pick any particular age to use logic. You use logic. I mean, the minute you teach a baby how to walk, you're using logic, cause and effect. Anything, keep your hand away from the stove, from the fire. That's logic. You do the same thing about the race issue. When you see something coming up, then you explain it to them.
Okay. Sam from Colorado, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And
Absolutely.
Don't be a stranger. Okay. Let's do this. Darnell. Okay, Darnell. Did you have something else you needed to contribute? Go ahead, Darnell.
Yes. I wanted to piggyback on. I just wanted to expound on the question I asked earlier. I know he said that he had made zero progress, but I want to know why has no progress been made if all this time has passed and all this energy has been used towards it. Why hasn't there been any progress?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
What is that? Here again, what is that question?
Why hasn't there been any progress, you say, Darnell?
Yes. With the code.
Why hasn't there been any progress?
Yes.
Well, it depends on how you want to measure progress. Now, you can measure progress simply by saying that, well, I made a lot of progress today because I told a white person, gave them a piece of my mind, and it hurt their feelings. And that's what I intended to do, because they were trying to hurt my feelings. So a black person can say that was progress. But see, according to the code, progress is when you finish the job. Finish what job? What did you set out to do? Replace the system of white supremacy with justice. That's what I set out to do. Now, so where's the progress? Have I done that? The answer is no. So it just depends on how you want to measure progress. But according to the compensatory logic, counter-racist logic, progress should be measured by a finished job. The job is finished. There's no more racism. And justice rules the entire planet and all of the creatures and whatnot in the universe. I mean, in support of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that's the criteria. And you measure, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, everything by that criteria. So the question is, has that been done? The answer is no. So then there's no progress. That's the way to present it to both white people and black people. If white people use a practical example, if a white person says, well, and sometimes you hear black people say it, well, we have made a lot of progress. The answer is not according to logic, counter-racist logic. And you say, well, what's the counter-racist logic? Progress is measured by, is the job finished? Has racism been eliminated and justice taken its place? That's the question. And if the answer is no, then you say there's been no progress. 99.5 won't do. Just like in football, we understand that. I don't care how cute you are catching passes over your shoulder. If you don't get in the end zone, so what?
So what? Yes.
See, the premise is, according to the code, black people got to stop getting caught up in the drama. Drama don't count. Getting the job done does.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Darnell, for your call. And obviously, you take a hint. Don't be a stranger. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Get in contact with the show. You can do so by calling 516-453-9921. Or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. If you use the telephone number, please, ma'am, please, sir, be sure to press the number 1 button so that I know that you have a question and you will be heard according to the rotation. And please, ma'am, please, sir, please, please, please give your name to the call screener so that I can give you your proper introduction. The Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. continues. Let's go to the chat room. Quickly here, Mr. Fuller, a question from Mata VGQ, I believe it is. Yeah, okay. Says this, question from Mr. Fuller. Is having a car in the system of racism, white supremacy, a form of showing off?
No, not necessarily. It depends on why the person bought the car. If the person bought the car in order to show off, then that was the reason the person bought the car, and that's incorrect. You don't do anything to show off if you're black on the planet. You do things to solve problems, and showing off is not a part of that scenario. We got problems that need solving. So you solve problems. So if you're talking about buying a car to show off to whom? In order to accomplish what? In order to solve what problem? If you're not trying to solve a problem, according to the code, black people shouldn't be in the show-off business at all unless you are showing off in the show business in order to solve a problem using show business. Now, if buying that car to show off to someone doesn't help to solve a problem, directly or indirectly, that needs solving, then that is wasted time and energy according to the compensatory code. No black person should be showing off anything. Why? We're not qualified. That's why.
Not qualified. Okay.
Yeah, you're a victim of white supremacy. Who are you showing off to? A bunch of prisoners showing off to other prisoners in the prison yard? What's the value of that? Zero.
Zero value. Okay, let's go here with Chris's Gmail, and then we'll go to Douglas and Dee Dee. But let's go to Chris first. It says, good day, Mr. Fuller. As a person of color, I can say that we are often emotional when it comes to dealing with the system of racism. Our emotions get in the way of practicing the counter-racist code. I heard you say, Mr. Fuller, that we are supposed to attach our feelings to logic, feelings such as frustration, anger, and pain. And he has a period there. He says, I'm asking you, Mr. Fuller, could you please illustrate an example in any of the 9 areas of how to attach these feelings to logic?
Go to producejustice.com and get the Counter-Racist Code Book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's the book that I've been talking about. That's why I wrote the book. People have asked me about that. What do you do? Mr. Fuller, what do you do? Neely, what do you do? You use logic. And I wrote the code book to tell everybody who would listen that that's what's missing. Black people have been jumping up and down and turning flips and using all kinds of sign language. I mean, mostly to just use it as a platform, the race issue, to respond by making a lot of noise. Well, we need to make music. And what's the difference between music and noise? Music helps you to struck think constructively and do things constructively. That's what basically music is, okay? So a code is what we need. That's music. In other words, it gets things done. You look at a situation and you do the most constructive thing that can be done in that situation. Not just do anything, run around in a circle, and then fall down exhausted after you get tired. That's what the white supremacists have trained black people to do in handling just about every situation of any importance. Jump up and down, scream and yell. Black people even use that term themselves. Hey, y'all, let's make some noise. Make some noise? We got noise. We don't need no more noise. We need music. What's the difference between music and noise? Music is sound, the way we talk to each other, the way we interact with white people. That's music if it produces what? Constructive results. That is music within that context. The best form of entertainment. We start talking about, we are musical people. Anything that you say or do is music.
Okay.
If it produces constructive results. Anything that you say or do that produces a non-constructive result is noise. And we need, because it's a code. Music is code, okay, for producing a certain result. And we look at it that way.
Okay. Someone has asked me about that YouTube video of Mr. Fuller and Dr. Short. It's called Results. It's very good, in my opinion. You may have a different opinion. But give yourself some time to look and hear what Mr. Neely Fuller has to say. Speaking about results, about 47-minute video on YouTube, Results. Okay, let's go to the 267. That would be Philly, and we have Douglas in the house. Douglas, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
I attended the protesters, the peaceful protesters, that is, because code don't allow us to loot or tear nothing up. We're looking for constructive results. So I seen a white person. He was a male, and he had a sign that says black people has a right to burn down the country that they built for free. So now that was a time for me to get in question mode. So I asked him, I said, do you live in Philadelphia? And he shies away from me and say, I live in the area. So then I asked him the next question, is it all right if black people burn down your house? So then I felt like I was deceived because he told me, no, just official buildings, City Hall, the municipal building, police stations. So, and that's not what I plan to do, and I don't think blacks have a right to do that. So, Mr. Fuller, my question for you is, out of the word guide, the master universal subversive elements. Could you elaborate on that more for us?
Does the word guide do what?
Out of the word guide on page 226.
Yes, sir.
Master.
226. Wait a minute, I'm going to get that myself. 226. Okay.
226.
Yeah.
All right. Word guide.
Okay, where you at, bro, on page 220? I'm there.
Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Master universal subversive elements.
Oh, I see it, yeah. At near the top, yeah.
Yes.
Fuller, do you see
Master universal subversive elements. Use this term to apply to the white supremacists, racist men and racist women, collectively, who act as the people of the known universe, who are the smartest, most powerful, and most malicious, and who have chosen to promote injustice by using the most destructive features of capitalists, communists, fascists, socialists, and or any other socio-material concept. Use that term. And that's, so if the question is, would you describe a person who is doing this as a possible suspect of being a master universal subversive element? The answer would be yes. Because one thing, you have a basic in the code. Any white person who is able to be a white supremacist should be suspected of being one. Now you never say that a white person is a white supremacist unless that white person says, I am a white supremacist. Why? Because there's no way to prove it. If you're black, you cannot prove that a white person is a white supremacist unless you go and get a white person to back you up, which means that's white supremacy right there being expressed. You have to have a white person. You have no credibility. No black person has credibility saying that a white person is a racist. So what do you say according to the compensatory logic? You say, I suspect that white person can be a racist. And what white person do you suspect of being a racist? Any white person who is able to be one. Now, where's the logic here? Where's the tendency for justice here? Is because no one, to the best of my knowledge, has produced a list of which white person is a racist and which white person is not. So that means that if you're a victim of racism, you have to suspect, if you're going to use logic, any white person who is able to be a racist of being a racist until proven to you that the person is not. It's the only way to do it. There's no other way for anybody to do it, according to logic, since there's no master list of who's a racist and who's not. So therefore, when you walk out on the street and you see a white person, which one of them is a racist and which one of them is not?
We don't know.
No, yes, you don't know. That's the answer to the question. So if you don't know, but then you know that racism exists, then what's the procedure? What's the correct procedure? What's the humane procedure? You suspect any white person could be one. Until when? Until that white person proves to you as an individual that he or she is not a racist. Now, also I'd like to add this. A part of the codified procedure, you never say to anybody and pointing out as an individual, black person, you point out a white person and say that white person is not a racist because you know this white person and you know that you've heard some black people say, I've been around this white person all my life. This white person does not have a racist bone in his body or her body. Now, you've probably heard some people say that. The code says,
treat me nice.
Yes. Now, the code says, are you supposed to give that black person who made that statement any credibility about the statement that was made? And the answer is no. That white person that he or she said doesn't have a racist bone in his or her body has to prove it to you as an individual. I mean, no black person can recommend another white person as not being a racist to another non-white person. Why? What's one of the characteristics of a white supremacist? Deception. Yes.
Okay.
And see, so a white supremacist who is really skilled at being one will convince 5 or 6 black people that he is definitely not a racist, and then he will use them to go out and bring the rest of them in. And he's just as racist as he can be because he's highly skilled at fooling people. He'll fool those 5 black people. All right? So that means that What does a white person have to do? You have to prove to each black person on the entire planet, individually, that you are not a racist. You can't do it on a collective basis. Recommendations. Recommendations don't count.
All righty. Douglas from Philly, thank you so much for your question. Don't be a stranger.
Thanks, Mr. Fuller. Thanks, Bobby.
All right. Okay, let's go to Dee Dee from Pennsylvania. Dee Dee, thanks for holding. You are on. Go ahead, Dee Dee, with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Thank you. Mr. Fuller, I've listened quite a bit to several of your presentations, and one of the points that you have made quite a bit lately is that the white man's anus is going to be the new black vagina. And you said that there's signs everywhere if we just open our eyes and just pay attention. And I've tried to do that, but I'm not seeing those same signs, and I would guess some other listeners aren't seeing those signs. Can you be very explicit and just specific so we can see this for ourselves more clearly? What are the signs that you just see repeatedly out there that support your statement?
When you see white people coming around black people saying that black people need a variety of sexualities. That's the first sign. In the system of white supremacy, you should always be suspicious of anything that a white person does that you didn't ask for, but they're going to bring it to you. You'll ask for housing and can't get it. You'll ask for a job, and that will be made very difficult for you. That's the pattern. You'll ask for anything that is of constructive value. But if you say anything about, I need a new form of sexuality, and I need my relatives, I need my offspring and whatnot to embrace all of these new forms of sexuality. They got about maybe 6 or 7 of them, and they're probably going to wind up with maybe about 30 or 40 or maybe a couple of hundred. Who knows, okay? And they're offering this, and they're willing to support it, willing to make movies about it, advertisements all over television about it. I mean, how wonderful this is. What you black people need, stop asking for things like, money to go into business and all like that. Put that on the back burner. What you want to do is get out here and do something about your sexuality. Your sexuality is kind of archaic. It's kind of backwards. It's primitive. I mean, this male-female thing, why be limited? Don't limit yourself. Be more diverse. You need to try more different forms of sexuality. I mean, this type of sexuality and that type of sexuality, hybrid sexuality, diverse sexuality, scatterization of sexuality. Let's see what else that we can come up with. You got anything else in the tank? Oh, yeah, well, we're working on it. We're going to, maybe by next week we'll have about 3 more different types of sexualities. And, hey, let's just say that the black female's vagina, all right, hey, that ain't worth a whole lot. I mean, it produces a whole lot of worthless babies and whatnot. Hey, maybe you need to try a white male anus. That might improve you black people all over the world. Let's put that out. Grab hold of that. White male anus is superior to a black female vagina any day. Let's make that a philosophy.
I've
they're doing this.
Definite.
You may not see signs of it, but you see them parading in the street. Just raise the question, what is this parade about? With a black person leading it? All right. And why is it that they come and get us when it's time to have the gay parade, but they don't come and get you when they got a new housing system that they got brand new built, sparkling, lawns all laid out, all clean, like the Levitt towns that they had after World War II, where they told black people, don't dare come over here, okay? Why don't they invite you then? But they'll invite you to lead the gay parade. Every black person should ask that. Why do you come and get me now? Shake me and wake me up and insist that I go. But you didn't come
can I ask?
When there was a job opening, you didn't come and get me. But why come and get me when you go looking for somebody to put a lot of feathers on my head and some rainbow flag around me and lead the gay parade, and I'm black? Why do that, sir, ma'am?
I've seen those signs where they're wanting male with male and female with female, but I'm not seeing signs that they're saying to go to the white male. It's, if you're a woman, get a woman. If you're a man, get a man. But I'm not seeing the signs that specifically go to the white man. So that's the piece I'm missing, and maybe others
Well,
aren't.
for one thing, you're a
piece.
female, so you wouldn't be invited to a white male anus.
No, not me. No.
You're a female. I mean, if you're a female, you might be.
Yeah.
They might come up with that, too. They might tell black females, hey, white male anus is a thing this year. Get with it. If you want to know something about, hey, you're talking about black holes out there in outer space. What about white holes here? All right.
So I think that's the piece I'm not seeing, and yes, I'm a female, and I'm not interested in anyway. But I'm not seeing the piece where they're pointing.
They are driving us absolutely crazy, and many of us are embracing it like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yes, I agree with that. That one piece I'm looking for. Yeah, I'm just looking for that one extra piece. But I agree. They're directing the females to females and the males to males. But I'm just trying to see what you see as far as the directly the male anus removing the black vagina. That's the part
I just pointed that out. There are a lot of other things. They're thinking of everything they can. Why? Because of a very logical thing. Sex is very powerful. So the white supremacists understand something maybe that a lot of black people don't understand. And that is, if you can control a person's sexuality, you can control them in just about everything else.
Right.
So the white supremacists understand that logical procedure. Because sex is very powerful. Very powerful. Sex causes people to do a whole bunch of things.
Oh, all right.
Thank you.
Dee Dee,
I'll keep looking for those signs.
Dee Dee, thank you for your questions. And if you Gmail me, I may have some information that might be able to help you. You know my Gmail address, 7MrBobby at...
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All righty. And thank you again, and don't be a stranger, Dee Dee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, that was outstanding dialogue. From the chat room, while we have the remaining moments here, JJ asked you this, Mr. Bobby, could you ask Mr. Fuller if he sees it feasible and compensatory to prep for disaster or civil disorder times, even as we fight to replace the system of white supremacy? If so, what are a few suggestions?
About what now?
He says, could you please ask Mr. Fuller if he sees it feasible and compensatory to prep for disaster or civil times, even as we fight to place the system of white supremacy? If so, what are a few suggestions?
To prep for disaster?
Prep, yeah.
Well, wait a minute. What's that word in front of disaster?
Yeah, he says if you see it feasible and compensatory to prepare or prep for disaster.
Prep.
Yeah,
P-R-E-P.
Yes, sir.
Which means prepare.
Yes, sir.
For disaster. Did he say prepare for disaster?
Yeah, prepare for disaster or civil disorder times, even as we fight to replace the system of white supremacy.
Well, the system of white supremacy is a disaster. has made a disaster of black people already. We're already in a disaster. It's just a matter of trying to get rid of the disaster by getting rid of the system of white supremacy. I mean, that's just an ongoing thing anyway. Sometimes things will get worse, sometimes they get better, but you still have the system of racism. So if you still have it, you still have it. You either have it or you don't. No such thing as a little bit of racism. So in answer to the question, you just codify everything you do. That's what the code book is for, to help us to have a code about what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, in order to do what? In order to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Justice meaning what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help each and every day in every area of activity. That should be the goal. Nothing short of that will do. Nothing short of that is acceptable. Nothing short of that should be considered progress. Nothing.
Okay. And while we have this opportunity, Mr. Fuller, it works out right. We have here 10:57 Eastern time here, so we're about to shut it down for another week. But it's at the very end, and let's leave that for you to speak very briefly about your book.
Yes, everything that we've been talking about this morning, most of it is talked about or suggested, and recommendations about how to think, how to speak, and how to act in regards to it in the textbook for victims of white supremacy that you can go to by going to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen are a couple of volumes there, basically. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code, which is what is recommended that we need, and that's what the book is supposed to be about. Code meaning a way of getting things done as an individual person. It's addressed to an individual. That's why it's called the United Independent Compensatory Code, meaning you're united, or you intend to be united, with what? With logic. And then you use logic to come up with a code meaning a way of going about doing things each and every day in all of the areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. What to do, what not to do. Because everything, according to a code, is a matter of knowing what to do and what not to do in every situation so that you get a constructive result. You go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. That's where the books are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. You were outstanding today. Thank you, all you Gmailers, and thank you in the chat room. You've all been good. Man, I can't tell you. I'm just overjoyed at your participation. We'll try to do better next week, so we'll see you again. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, callers.
We'll try to do better. Thank you again. Thank everybody.